Australian tech company DroneShield develops technology to identify drones and then take them down. The drone detection system uses high-powered microphones to pick up distinctive sounds that drones make and then target them from up to 1 kilometre away. Once you've sighted the drone, you can pull out the drone gun. Here's Oleg Vornik from DroneShield.
Drone gun is a gun which is a bit over 1 meter in size. It's effectively a directional jammer. So what you're seeing is a gun stock that has 3 antennas mounted onto it. The 3 antennas correspond to a 2.4 gigahertz, a 5.8 gigahertz, and a GPS and GLONASS jammer. So the last bit is optional. So we have an option to disable it at the factory for customers for whom our RF jamming is legal. And the gun connects to a backpack that the user carries on their back or can have by the side of the user, which is effectively the jammer technology itself.
And so the fact you're jamming, and we'll look at that and what that means in a moment, but the jamming doesn't involve firing or propelling anything at the drone. This idea that you're taking the drone out with like a great big rubber bullet and knocking it off its course, that's not the case, is it?
This is not a kinetic measure. The gun does not fire any physical object at a drone. The reason why we came to this particular technology is that a lot of users do not want collateral damage associated with a traditional gun. They want to be able to retain evidence, so to be able to collect the drone and do forensic investigation of the drone. If a drone is in a situation where it's conducting a terrorism attack, for example, so you have a crowded stadium and the drone is approaching with a bomb, the last thing you want is to shoot the drone and potentially create an explosion. So a jammer is a very low impact way of dealing with the drones. And of course, the other benefit of having a non-kinetic device is that for a number of drones, when the radio frequency is jammed but the GPS is not jammed, the mechanism is returned back to pilot, so you can track where the pilot is as well, which is quite important for a lot of our customers.
Let's just look at the jamming then. There you talked about the radio jamming versus the GPS jamming, and you also mentioned GLONASS. Now, my understanding of GLONASS is that is a similar geopositioning system that is run out of Russia. So it sort of runs in parallel with GPS, but it's managed by the Russians. Take us through the jamming itself. How does that work, and how are you able to remotely jam a drone from the ground with your drone gun?
In most countries around the world, there are allocated radio frequencies and general public use frequencies. So 2.4 gigahertz and 5.8 are considered general and unallocated frequencies, and a lot of devices that use radio communications, such as Wi-Fi routers and radios, go in that band. So things like cell phone communications, public broadcasts, and others are on allocated bands, which are not the bands that our gun targets. So what you'll find is that effectively all of the drone manufacturers out there use those public bands because that's the bands that they're allowed to use for drone communication. So that's the frequencies at which both the drone flies through, so when you use a control on your drone to point in a different direction, but also the video. So drones that shoot the video have the video transmitted back to the operator on one of those frequencies.
And so on board most drones today, as a protection sort of mechanism or system, the minute that radio frequency is jammed, it's not available, the drone using the GPS says, hold on, I took off here, or my pilot is here, I will return to base.
There are usually 2 mechanisms built in the drones today. So the first one is exactly what you described, which is if the radio frequency connection is jammed but the GPS is still available, the drone would say, hey, I don't have any connection with the pilot anymore, but I know where I am and I know where I came from. So it tends to lift higher to ensure that it clears any obstacles on its way, and then it goes back to the pilot and lands. If both RF and GPS are jammed at the same time, the drone says, I've lost my connection with the operator, and I don't know where I am, I don't know where I came from anymore, so I'm just going to safely land vertically straight down.
So, Oleg, who's using the drone gun today? Give us a scenario. And I imagine airports are somewhere they control for birds. I imagine their big fear is a drone flying into the pathway of an aircraft that's either taking off or landing. Is that a scenario? Have you got any airports using the drone gun?
This is a very, very new technology, and we are seeing the same thing for our drone detection. So it's just starting to emerge. You're seeing incidents at Heathrow and Dubai airports, in particular, a number of those this year. So this is certainly a technology that's applicable for those airports, just like our drone detection technology is. Airport is, in fact, one of the riskiest places for people to fly drones, and you're seeing a lot of plane spotters these days who don't intend to cause any harm, but they fly around airfields trying to film planes landing and taking off. However, if a drone gets sucked into a jet engine, like a bird, a medium-sized metal object, that will create quite a degree of damage to the engine and potentially some fatalities as a result of that, depending on the situation. In terms of the general use of the jammers, we are seeing US military starting to deploy those in combat zones. You're seeing a lot of ISIS now using those cheap drones like DJI Phantom, ringing them up with explosives, with bombs that they drop on facilities of the people that they are fighting with. So terrorism in the Middle East and army using those devices, those jammers, is certainly a big market now, and we'll see it expand to other users. Legislative framework is fairly strict in a lot of countries. So, for example, in the US, only federal agencies are able to use jamming devices. In Australia, where we're based, it's limited to military, law enforcement, and first responders. So it will be some time before we can see people being able to use jammers, private citizens, and deploy them against drones.
The other factor here, Oleg, is the fact that drones, a little bit like computers, are getting more and more powerful. They're getting stronger sensors. They are becoming more ubiquitous. So the volume of these things is going to surge, isn't it? Or it is surging as we speak.
It's really fascinating to see how quickly technology evolves. So you're seeing sense and avoid radars on a lot of drones these days. You're seeing the price of the drones reduce quite rapidly. So those things are effectively iPhones with blades in a lot of cases. So we'll see drones being able to do much more complicated tasks very quickly. It's funny, in New Zealand, you're seeing drones delivering pizza even, which is certainly a world first, and New Zealand is leading the way around the legislation. So this is very interesting to see in terms of flying beyond line of sight, etc. So we believe that as more and more drones come in the skies, the danger caused by drones is going to increase as well.
And so you are currently offering drone detection systems, so someone can buy a system that will essentially alert them when a drone comes into a specific aerospace. And I imagine in terms of lots of corporate IP and maybe agriculture, or, I mean, you think Monsanto may be growing a special crop somewhere that they don't want people to have a look at. I mean, a drone is quite a nice way to get in there and have a look and have a snoop, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So we have been now selling our drone detection system, which uses acoustic microphones, very sensitive microphones, to detect drones up to 1 kilometer away. And that is quite different to drone gun in that it's a perfectly legal technology for any user. So people like you and I can purchase our detection sensors. The applications are quite wide. So we are seeing prisons, for example, right around the world, having contraband being primarily weapons, drugs, cell phones, and escape kits being dropped off by drones. We already talked about drones flying around airports. In terms of privacy breach, you are now seeing drones on movie sets. So whether it's Star Wars or Game of Thrones, you're seeing fans trying to predict what will happen in the upcoming series. We've been working with Boston Marathon last 2 years in conjunction with Boston Police after the sad terrorism events that have occurred a few years ago, to help those guys to ensure it doesn't happen again, this time through a drone threat. So it's fair to say that anywhere where safety, security or privacy are concerned caused by drones, we have a role to play.
Oleg Vornik from DroneShield.